Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of The Sweat, a very special edition of The Sweat. We got dual hosts today. I'm going to be kicking things off, talking some baseball with DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman for the first segment, but then the Jeff Ulrich show begins. He's going to be talking some F1, some NASCAR, and also recapping the first two rounds of the Scottish Open. So stick around. We got a lot of good and informative stuff for you guys today. But as I mentioned, Matt Meiselman is here to talk some baseball. We've got a 14-game slate on Friday. A lot of stuff going on in the DFS and betting world. So, Matt, let us start with this. Who is the pitcher you are looking to build your lineups around this evening?
Well, it's a big slate, but it looks like almost every pitcher is underpriced. So I guess I'll pick one of those. And I think Blake Snell is my favorite option here at 7,900. I think there are a couple of guys that could end up being more popular than him. Lucas Giolito, maybe Aaron Ashby. And I talked about this yesterday with Musgrove. The Giants lineup is just not that good. There's some injury issues there. They just aren't having a great season overall. And Snell had some struggles early on, but I think the strikeout upside is just there. So 7,900 is just kind of a crazy price for him. I know Lucas Giolito's cheaper and we'll get to him, but I think Snell is my favorite pitcher up there at 7,900.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's a very odd slate when it comes to pitching. There's some pretty notable names that are resting in that tier below 8K. I think a lot of people are going to be exploiting that 7 to 8K tier. One guy who did draw my attention was Tyler Wells, who is one of the cheapest options on the board in general. He's just $6,300. Wells hasn't really been a great DFS option this season, despite some great numbers, because he hasn't struck anyone out, making that transition from the Orioles bullpen last season to the rotation this season. But his last 7 starts, a 1.89 ERA, 0.84 whip. He's been fantastic, and you'd like to think that, again, his glaring flaw as a DFS asset, his inability to strike anyone out, is maybe rectified a little bit by the fact he's facing the Angels tonight, who just can't seem to stop striking out. They've got a 29% strikeout rate as a team across the last 30 days. That number is actually over 30% the last 2 weeks. Even Mike Trout seemingly is striking out multiple times per game the last couple of weeks. So maybe Tyler Wells can walk out of here after 5 or 6 innings against the Angels with 6 or 7 strikeouts, which really would vault him into a fun position considering his price point. Let's move now to some hitters. We're going to start with the infield. Obviously, lots of guys to choose from, Matt. Who's your favorite?
So shortstop is a position where I don't think there's anyone that's a great option. And because of that, I'm fine just playing Javier Baez at 4,700. So there are a lot of decent options here, but Baez has the benefit of likely facing the chalkiest pitcher on the whole slate in Lucas Giolito. And Giolito has been quite good his last 2 starts, but before that, he had 2 negative fantasy point games in a row. I think we all know at this point, Giolito is just very inconsistent. And if no one's playing him, you probably want to just play him. But if everyone's playing him, which looks like it'll be the case tonight, then playing some hitters against him is a really strong move. So, yes, a really big slate. You don't necessarily need to leverage the chalkiest guy. But I think Baez is just a good fantasy player in general because, at least for GPPs, there's stolen base upside, there's home run upside. He strikes out a ton, but when he's good, he can be really good.
Yeah, I like that entire game, honestly. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to some totals on the DK Sportsbook. But I'm going to stick same position, same game. I'll go with Tim Anderson on the other side at 5,400. Tarek Skubal, darling of the fantasy world the first 2 months of the season, but he's really fallen off his last 5 starts, an ERA of exactly 9 in that span of time. And it's right-handed bats, as you would expect, that have done a lot of the damage off of Skubal. 2.6 home runs per 9 and a 436 WOBA to opposing right-handed hitters. Tim Anderson's been crushing lefties the past half decade. I don't think I'm really breaking news here, but he's got a 213 WRC plus this season in a limited sample against left-handed pitching. So I think Anderson is in a really nice spot. And as Matt mentioned, I think there's a lot of guys on both sides of this game that are in a really nice spot tonight for DFS purposes. Okay, don't want to be predictable here, but we started infield. Let's go outfield. Who is your top outfielder on this slate, Matt?
Well, we're definitely not going to be predictable because I'm going directly against the pitcher that you just talked about. And yes, I do think that Tyler Wells should strike out more batters against the Angels than he would against a normal team. Like, I totally agree with that point. But again, Tyler Wells averages 5 Ks per 9 innings. Like, I just don't think he's very good. He's faced some pretty weak offenses lately, so that's helped him a lot. So I'm going with Mike Trout. Like, yes, I know Trout is a guy who is striking out more than normal the last couple of years. He's become more of a power hitter, but that power is real. And also the benefit of Trout and Ohtani, for that matter, is they're overpriced to the point where I don't think really anyone's playing them tonight, because the Yankees are cheaper, the Dodgers are cheaper, just about everyone's cheaper. The Diamondbacks are much cheaper. So I love Trout. I also love Ohtani. They're both in the 6,000s, but yeah, you can play Tyler Wells, and certainly in lineups that don't have Wells, you might want to consider some Angels too.
Look, I think if Tyler Wells gets destroyed by Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, no one's really going to bat an eye. I don't think that'll be all that surprising if regression hits him pretty hard on Friday night. I'm again going to stick in that same game, just go to the other side. I think Austin Hayes is in a really nice spot. He's been struggling so far in the month of July, was also banged up a little bit, almost went on the IL, but just missed a couple games for the Orioles. But this is someone who throughout his somewhat brief MLB career, we're talking about parts of 3.5 seasons at this point, has really hit left-handed pitching quite well. He's got an 802 career OPS, a 216 isolated power against southpaws, hitting primarily in the 3 spot in that Orioles lineup. Hayes, I think he's kind of taken some people by surprise this season. He's got some really nice underlying metrics. And Reed Detmers, this is really just about him. Getting called up from AAA to make this start because of an injury to Michael Lorenzen, who went on the IL yesterday. Detmers, it's funny. I mean, obviously his highlight of this season is going to be that no-hitter, but since that point, he's been absolutely terrible. He's someone like Tyler Wells who does not generate a lot of swings and misses, and that's a problem considering his expected WOBA on batted ball events is 409 this season. So I think if the Orioles can make some contact, which I think Austin Hayes can do, it's going to be some pretty loud contact, considering that Detmers is also just in the 13th percentile of qualified pitchers in expected slugging so far this season. So hitters have had their way with this guy since he did throw that very impressive and surprising no-hitter. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of guys at the top of the slate, Mike Trout, etc. Where are we getting some value to fit those guys in, Matt?
So I'm going to be kind of repeating myself here because I'm going back to the Tigers, and I picked Riley Green yesterday, so I'll just pick him again. This is, again, a leverage idea against Giolito, but also there are just so many outfielders around 3K tonight that I think will be wildly popular. A few of them are on the Diamondbacks. Joey Gallo is under $3,000 in a good matchup. So one, everyone's playing Giolito, so no one's going to play any Tigers. And then also there's just so many other outfielders to prioritize. But I actually do think this is a decent spot for Detroit. So Green doesn't have a lot of major league experience. He's a rookie, but I think the fantasy upside is there. And the White Sox are a team you can run on, and it's specifically if Sebi Zavala is behind the plate. He didn't start last night, but stolen base upside is there. So I like Green. I think Robbie Grossman, similar price range. Basically all the cheap Detroit guys I like tonight.
Let's just stick in the American League Central, everyone's favorite offensive powerhouse division. This is the Vinny P night. I truly believe it. You look at some of the advanced metrics, he really should have incredible statistics for his first 39 plate appearances as a major league player. His expected WOBA is 439 through his first 39 PAs. Yet, because of a 130 BABIP, he's hitting well below the Mendoza line. Does have one home run, kind of a weird, janky home run that for a second it looked like he was thrown out at second base, and then they reviewed it. So he couldn't even get to celebrate his first career home run. I think he puts one actually in the seats tonight, would be my prediction against Aaron Savale, who has just had a nightmarish season for the Guardians. Comes into this game just getting destroyed, honestly, on the road. I mean, you could really pick any split you want with Savale, but particularly on the road, he's been quite bad. 9.90 ERA. 345 opponents are hitting against him away from Progressive Field. I just think Savale, extreme fly ball pitcher, someone who does not generate a ton of swing and miss, although it's been a little bit better this season than it has in years past. Generally speaking, he's good to give up a couple home runs on a bad night. So why not Vinny P at $2,800? Okay, we talked a lot about this 14-game slate through the prism of DFS. Let's talk about it from a sportsbook perspective. I'm going to pigeonhole you here a little bit, Matt. Not just a total you like to go over the number.
Yeah, I guess I don't love any of them, but there's one game that I potentially like, and that's Yankees Red Sox. But we need Aaron Judge in the lineup. So this total with Cortez and Seabold, I think like it should be a high scoring game. I think people know that, but 9.5 would be reasonable if Judge is out. Aaron Judge might be the best hitter in baseball this year. I think there's a pretty good case for that. So to me, this number is just priced for Judge not to play. He didn't play last night. He was available to pinch hit, though. So maybe he just DHs tonight. Like, I think there's a real possibility of that. So I would watch this one, but I think if Aaron Judge plays, the Yankees Red Sox total should be north of 10.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, and we've talked a lot about this game already. But I think 8 is the number we see right now in Detroit, Chicago. I am very willing to take the over in that game. Taking the Tigers to be part of an over is somewhat of a hesitant move, but again, Lucas Giolito is a wild card. You really don't know what version of him is going to show up. He's got a 7.17 ERA across his past 7 starts, and that includes his last 2 starts, which have been pretty good. So you don't know what version of him is going to show up. I think the Tigers have been better offensively since they called up Riley Green. It really does lengthen that lineup a little bit. And then you've got the White Sox, who are finally, I guess, almost fully healthy. They don't have everyone back yet. Yasmani Grandal is still in the IL, although I think he's starting a rehab assignment pretty soon. But, Eloy Jimenez is back. Yoan Moncada is back, although that might not matter that much. Even as a switch hitter, he's better as a left-handed hitter. But Tarek Skubal, like I said, a 9 ERA across his last 5 starts. And the White Sox come into this game leading baseball with a 126 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. You can basically just close your eyes and point to a guy in the lineup, and he's got amazing splits against left-handed pitchers. So with that considered, with the fact that the White Sox bullpen is still very, very injured and underwhelming, I think this game goes over the number tonight. Let's talk about player props in particular now, Matt. Is there one that you got your eye on for tonight?
Well, you know me, I'm definitely going to bring up stolen bases because that's
Yeah.
basically the only player prop market that I'll talk about. I think that Starling Marte actually has the highest number tonight for a steal that he's had the entire season, at least the highest I can remember at plus 650. And Marte was dealing with some injury issues a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, but he does have a stolen base in each of the last 2 Mets series. So I think he's healthy now. He's been playing every day. I think all the indications are that he's fine. And Pablo Lopez is obviously a really good pitcher, but I think the Marlins are generally a team that's reasonably okay to run on. But even if you just call this an average spot for stealing bases, Marte is a guy who usually is priced around plus 400 for a steal. I think that's roughly where he should be. And 650, I just don't really understand why the line's so high today. So I really like the spot for him.
Well, I'm not going to go with one that's quite as long odds, but I'm going to talk about a pitcher strikeout prop. And you mentioned Aaron Ashby earlier. His prop is set at 6.5 tonight. It is plus money, plus 105 to go over that number. I think the Pirates, from a lineup construction standpoint, are one of the most interesting teams in all of baseball. They utilize platoons relatively well, but where most teams struggle to find a couple of left-handed bats to stick in their platoon situation, the Pirates are the most left-handed team in all of baseball. They, on most nights, put out a lineup that features exclusively 7 natural left-handed bats, not including Brian Reynolds, who's a switch hitter and who will obviously hit right-handed tonight off of Aaron Ashby. But they're probably going to have to leave in 4 to 5 left-handed bats tonight against Ashby. Ashby has struck out 32.1% of the left-handed batters he has faced this season. Obviously, he's got pretty good strikeout numbers against right-handed batters as well, but he's really dominated from a strikeout perspective in the rare opportunity he gets left on left. And the Pirates in general have the 3rd highest strikeout rate in baseball across the last 2 weeks, up over 27%. So even in the starts where Ashby's been lit up a little bit, he's still managed to get those strikeouts. So I think at plus money, him to go over 6.5 is a pretty nice prop. Okay, Matt, before we get you out of here, let's talk about a money line or a run line bet that you like on tonight's slate.
Yeah, I don't get why the Cincinnati Reds are such large underdogs. Although I guess I kind of do get it. Shane McClanahan has been insane this year, but I think, one, he's overachieving a little bit. Like, no one is this good. And the odds in this game basically are assuming McClanahan is like Jacob deGrom now. And he's basically pitched that way this year, but I think there's enough track record behind him that we should assume, yes, he's an ace now, like 100%, and he may even be a deserving Cy Young favorite. But the idea that this is like one of the all-time greatest pitchers now, which is I think what he would need to be for the Rays to be significant road favorites against Luis Castillo, who's a pretty good pitcher too. And I actually think the Reds have a better offense than the Rays do, and they're at home. So I think this is all about overhype for McClanahan, and I do think he's great, but plus 155 on the Reds, I think, is just way too long of odds for them.
I think I'm going to look at the Mariners money line tonight. We've just kind of got two teams moving in opposite directions. The Mariners are 13-3 in their last 16 games overall. They obviously got Ty France back off the IL last night, where the Blue Jays 1-6 in their last 7 games overall on the road tonight. And also something to watch out for. George Springer has now not played in 2 consecutive games. Looked a little strange when he came in to pinch hit a couple nights ago. Would not be surprised to see Springer not in the lineup again. And obviously that is a large factor in how well the Jays offense functions as a whole. You've also got Ross Stripling going up against George Kirby. And while Kirby's had some rough starts this season, I think overall from just a pure stuff perspective, Seattle probably has the advantage on the mound and in the bullpen as well in tonight's game. So the fact that they are just minus 110, basically a pick'em tonight against the Blue Jays at home, I will ride with a red hot Mariners team. And that's going to do it. Want to thank Matt for being here for this segment, but the show is far from over. My Canadian brother, Jeff Ulrich, will be taking over, talking some NASCAR, some F1 in this next segment.
Welcome back into the sweat, folks. Garion's gone. All those baseball nerds, it's the end of the day for them. You'll see them on the slate later in the afternoon. But for right now, Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich here to bring you a little NASCAR F1 racing series here. We do every Friday on the sweat. And, there's a little bit of head-to-head action going here. Yeah, you can see us. Those fantastic graphics. Very, 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 extremely looking like us there. As you can see, too, Pierce does still have the lead at 654 points, but I have caught up. Pierce, when you don't show up, when you crash on your way to work, you don't get to make a pick. I got 2 picks last week, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, 99 points for your guy here. So I cut into your lead. Again, that's just what happens. Just like a real race, buddy. You don't make it in and you get 0 points. So anyways.
Why did you get 2 picks? Like that I lose, but why did you get 2?
The viewers deserve 2 picks, Pierce, just because he didn't show up to work, okay? We had to give
Why am I being penalized?
Well, I don't know. I don't make the rules, Bal. All I know is that I picked 2 drivers who finished inside the top 5. I did pretty good. I still haven't heard a compliment from you. Thank you. I'll appreciate it. But anyways, that was last week. You still got a lead, okay? You can add to it here. We got the Quaker State 400, Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's a big speedway. We know what it is. It's going to be lots of craziness going on, right? So let's break it down for the people. Again, we're going to get into some F1 after this too, but let's start with the Quaker State 400. Pierce, give us a little bit of lowdown on what the Atlanta Motor Speedway is going to bring us. What sort of driver are we looking for? Is this going to be pure chaos because it's a super speedway event?
Yeah, so play drivers starting in the back, and I'll see you guys on Monday. I wish I was being facetious, but to be completely honest with the viewers and most of the people who've been playing DFS NASCAR since 2015 at DraftKings know the strategy. It's play drivers in the back at these plate tracks. They don't use restrictor plates anymore, but we still use that as a shorthand. These cars have lowered horsepower, and with the high banking, that creates pack drafting or pack racing and drafting. All the cars are running next to each other at 200 miles per hour. One guy gets squirrely or loose. He then takes out a bunch of cars with him, a bunch of good cars with him. And then you fast forward to the end of the race and you look at the results and you see guys that you would never expect to get top fives and top tens, and they're there. And not only are they there, but they started in the back. They scored a bunch of place differential points. They scored finishing position points, and they were priced at their typical low salary. And I mean, that's just the strategy. That's the way it works. It's the way it's always been at Daytona. That's the way it's always been at Talladega. And now that's the way it is at Atlanta in the offseason. They reconfigured the track. They decided, hey, let's just turn this into a Daytona and Talladega because people like to watch wrecks. And for the most part, it's true. People like to watch wrecks. That is what we will get. So to make it simple, the best way is to target drivers starting in the back.
Okay, so and that's fair. We do talk about this every time we get a big race on one of these super speedway tracks. But is there, just before we move on to the DFS section, is there one team that you think is better at this than the other? Because you mentioned it's pack racing style and there's some strategy involved. Is there one team or one driving team that you think does better at these events that people should target?
No.
No. Okay, fair enough.
No, there have been times where teams have showed up and had a couple good races in a row, but then you go to the next race, then all of a sudden all the cars from a specific team wrecks. And I mean, you can try to find trends. We've got tons of data to look at. And I mean, Eric Almirola at one point amazingly scored 8 top 10s in a row at Talladega, 8 times in a row. Not only did he not wreck, but he scored a top 10. And that just doesn't happen. Now, what has he done in the last 5 races or so at Talladega? He's wrecked in every one of them. So that's just the way it goes.
All right. Well, after that intro where we're basically telling people not to play anybody, this next question should be interesting. So we got, I think we got 10 drivers over 9K in price this week. Who are the main guys you're fading? We know you're fading everyone, but who are the main drivers from the top 10 that you really don't want to play here, that you don't want to put in your DFS NASCAR lineups? And you can mention the guys you like to, but mainly give us the guys that you think are good fades.
There is no such thing as fading a driver based on who they are. And actually, if there is, and there will be some people that are going to look at the spreadsheets and the stats and say, this guy never finishes well. Well, then that's probably a guy that you want to target because it's completely random. Now, I'm not saying it's random so people don't play. It's actually a good time for, the novice NASCAR fan or the person who's never played DFS NASCAR before to play this week. Because it's exciting to watch all the cars running together in a pack. It's exciting to see the wrecks and the chaos, but also you don't really need to labor over research for hours and hours and hours. You don't need to be familiar with the names. You don't need to be familiar with the teams or the drivers. You simply just want to mathematically predict who can score the most points if they avoid a wreck. So if you are going to fade someone, it's not necessarily based on their name. It's based on this guy's starting too close to the front. He could win the race starting from 10th place. And he's only going to get 9 place differential points on top of his finishing position points. Someone starting 30th and finishing 10th is going to score more points. So the fade really isn't based on names or reputation. It really is based on the starting grid, which we will have on Saturday.
Okay. So Pierce still hasn't given us the name of a driver he likes yet. I will throw out this right before we get to the next section. Kyle Larson is shockingly, Pierce, the 4th most expensive driver. Is this the first time we've had him as not the most expensive driver this year? It feels like it to me, but I don't know. So Kyle Larson down there at 10-1. I mean, again, you always talk about the talent. Now we're getting a discount on him. Is this a good idea for, like you said, maybe the novice NASCAR DFSer to start with Kyle Larson just for the fact that A, he's really talented. B, now we can get him at a discount. And C, if he does survive, he's going to be probably the most talented driver near the front. So I know a lot of this is going to depend on pole position, but are you at least liking the price on him this week and the discount we're getting?
Price doesn't matter this week. You could afford anyone. Oh. Typically, the winning optimal lineup will leave $2,000, $3,000, even $4,000 on the table. That's really unheard of in DFS. That just doesn't happen. The natural tendency, the natural urge is to spend your money, but most people have gotten over that, and they can see over the 28 plate races that we've had at DraftKings think the average is something like $2,000 left over. So you could spend even more on Kyle Larson. It wouldn't be a problem. And the real reason for his salary to be a little bit lower is because he hasn't had much success in the Cup Series. He has won the Xfinity Series plate race. He just hasn't been lucky enough to win one in the Cup Series. And that's really all that it is. I mean, it's pretty much luck. Talent does not mean anything. It's just avoiding the wrecks. It's
All right.
Plain and simple.
All right. No. This is good advice. This is good advice too. We want to know this stuff. It is one of those races where, people crash and you can leave a ton of money on the table. So let's make this simple, because instead of going like best value or anything like that, obviously the best plays, especially for Pierce, our NASCAR expert. And he does have some great articles up on the DK Nation playbook. So check those out after. But let's just get your best play. Like, who is the guy down low then that you think from the pack is going to be able to make a break this week? Like, you give us your best couple guys if you want, but down there, obviously he's probably going to be someone like way below 8K. Who are you thinking? Who you got your eye on this week to make a move and get us some points in our DFS lineups?
Again, I don't want to start throwing out names and swaying people in one direction or the other. I really think the strongest approach is to not have names in your mind and not be, it's just brand name at this point to pick certain drivers. Right? The statistics in the past are really irrelevant. It's not so much who is the play, it's how you play. And the way that I would tell people to go into this is, well, two things. Based on a drawing theme. So one, draw a line through the names. Ignore the names. That's just going to distract you. That's going to get you off of the strategy. The strategy is you need finishing position points and you need place differential points. Any driver in this field can do it. Now, number two is, where do you draw the line? You can lower or shrink your player pool. So do you want to take drivers that are starting 20th or further back? Do you want to take drivers that are starting 25th and further back? And so wherever you draw that line, you build that player pool, and then you just start building lineups from there. And you don't really need to look at the names. You just say, hey, I got to line up with the guy starting 36th. I got to line up with the guy 25th. So, I mean, you're just really picking numbers. A random lineup number generator is a really strong way to go. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds silly. But look at some of these optimal lineups. Look at some of the names of the drivers that end up winning people money. That's it. Starting position.
No names this Friday from Pierce Dietrich, folks. There's none. We're not getting a single name from him this week. That's fine. Hey, you heard the strategy. The strategy does make sense. It is a bit of a crapshoot. You're going to want guys who are starting from the back of the pack. Those place differential points, big time. I'm gonna break the ice here and just throw out a couple names, just for the sake of throwing out names. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a guy with a good, speed, obviously speedway record. I think he's someone who could definitely pop up. There we go. Our team wants some graphics, Pierce. Let's go. They don't want to just look at our mugs all day. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a guy who I think could definitely pop up with a top 10 here as well. A couple other dudes down there, kind of similar. Michael McDowell, I know a guy you probably like a little bit, Pierce. I know I'm not going to get a name out of you today, but
I'll give you a bunch of names with the next question.
Hold on.
Well, the next question, I'll give you a bunch of names.
You're going to give me a bunch of names on the next question. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to throw Michael McDowell as the other. Let's go to the next question then. Is there a bet for the DK Sportsbook that you're looking at for this race?
Betting is a little different. So in DFS, we're just trying to get guys that survive. It could get top 10s, maybe even a top 5. But in betting, a lot of those long shots, guys starting in the back, their odds of winning, it just doesn't happen. So you can look at the DFS lineups and see random names appear. But for the most part, when we look at who actually wins these races, it's the names of familiar drivers. Now, there are long shots. So given that we're going to see a bunch of wrecks, and even with the favorites, you're getting pretty good return. I still think you should go after some of these long shots. I mean, you mentioned Stenhouse, you mentioned McDowell. McDowell won the 2021 Daytona 500 at a 100-1 bet. And he had past success. Stenhouse has won twice before. He was leading at Atlanta earlier this season before wrecking. Chase Briscoe has been one of the better plate racers in the Cup Series. It's a small sample size of just 6 races, but Chase Briscoe is right there, and that's really what you need. So first of all, you need to, in order to win the race, you have to finish the race. That's what he's been doing. So he's within striking distance, just needs breaks to his way. I mentioned Eric Almirola, who had a hot streak for a while. Brad Keselowski will have a solid car. At one point in time, he was one of the best racers in the series. Again, these are guys that not only can survive, they have a track record, and they have that extra bit of oomph that is necessary to win the race. If you really want to go crazy and push it, I don't think these guys necessarily could win, but the return is actually pretty appealing. Corey LaJoie is typically there in the top 5 at the end. He was finished 5th at Atlanta, very close, big time odds there. Ty Dillon is more of a top 10 guy, but again, if he's running in the top 10 on the last couple laps, anything can happen. I also would look at possibly Todd Gilliland. Front Row Motorsports has won multiple plate races with David Reagan and with, as I mentioned earlier, Michael McDowell. So he'll have a strong car. All those are worth considering. So I would go really long on most of my bets this week.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm kind of down with you. I was looking at, top 10 market for a guy like McDowell if you want a bit of a safer bet, plus 160. But same type of thing. Those names you could look at. You could sprinkle a couple win bets in there with some of those guys. But top 5 on like 2 of those names, I mean, you're going to be getting really good numbers on guys like a Gillian is plus 1,500 for a top 5. You mentioned LaJoie plus 1,000. So you can just, mix and match like a basket of 2 guys there with top 5 bets. We get one in the racing, like you said, these top 10 going into the last couple laps, anything can happen. So that's definitely the strategy I'd be looking at for this week as well. Okay, before we get to F1 quickly, should we just give you the guy who's starting in 27th, or do you want to actually name a name for our contest this week? I'm going to leave it up to you. You choose. Do you want a number or a name?
That's pretty well. So here's the trick. I don't know if you remember the last time I did this to you, but I'll do it again. I'll take Noah Gragson because I knew he was going to start in the back. So he actually wrecked though, but I'll take him again. Noah Gragson.
You go Gragson.
I'm pretty confident he'll start in the back.
Okay, Gragson. I'm gonna go a little bit bigger. I'm gonna go Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I'll go Stenhouse Jr. I think this is definitely a spot where he can just.
He might start up front and absolutely destroy you, but hey,
I know that. I know. I understand. We're gonna get the win anyways, though, pal. And I'm gonna get the win points. Okay, so just hold your horses back. You didn't even show up to work last week. Okay, let's move on to F1. Let's do this F1 thing while we got some time. The producers haven't cut us off for not naming a single driver for 10 minutes of our last segment. Let's go to F1. Last week, Max Verstappen, he was coming off 2 straight wins. He finished 7th. He finally didn't win. Amazing. Ferrari was back on top. Carlos Sainz Jr. got his first career win. A guy we were kind of targeting earlier in the season, but it didn't happen. Now he comes through with his first career win. So what do you see? Do you see Red Bull finishing back on top in Austria, or do you see Ferrari keeping the momentum while they're staying in Europe?
This is going to be a Red Bull week. I mean, this literally is Red Bull's track. They own this track in Austria. It's called the Red Bull Ring. Their main advisor, Helmut Marko, believes that the Honda engine turbocharger is designed, at least runs really well at the high altitude in Austria. You go back to last season, Verstappen won twice and won both races. He's won at this track 4 times. This is a power track. We have seen Red Bull has basically been the best car when we're talking about straight line, high speed, low drag, and that's where Verstappen has been absolutely a monster. We look at Baku, he was the best. You look at Jeddah, he was the best. Here we are again, a high speed, a lot of straights, 3 DRS zones. Verstappen's going to be the guy. We've already had free practice 1s in the books. Now, technically, Leclerc was the fastest when we're looking at Q trim. But when we look at Q trim and also race pace, which Verstappen actually was able to get in his Q runs and some pace runs, and he was fast in that. So it's clearly going to be another Max Verstappen week.
And quickly, before we're out of here, any value here down below that if you're gonna captain Verstappen, any guy that you think could just pop up with a decent race here, any team you're looking at?
Well, I would consider Alonso if we get a little bit of rain and we get some chaos. I mean, we saw last week Leclerc got damage. Max Verstappen ran into damage all on lap 1. So any of this stuff can happen easily and early in a race. And we know that the Alpines tend to have some pretty strong straight line speed. That might be where I would go. I don't think it's going to be Mercedes week with their typical porpoising issues at these types of tracks.
Okay. Sounds good. There you go. All your racing info. Don't play the drivers at NASCAR. Play the numbers. And then Verstappen week again for F1. So thanks, Pierce. We'll be back with Colin Sherwin, guys. We're going to take a short break now. We're going to be back. We're going to talk some Scottish Open, some live golf bets heading into the weekend. Yeah, we got 2 PGA tournaments on. So be right back. Watch this video. We'll be back. All right, we're back. There we go. Like a belated Canada Day, an extra Canada Day. Just to signify the fact that we have two Canadian hosts on. Wow, for one episode of the Sweat, amazing. It's just how efficient we are here in Canada. Anyways, we're back. We're going to break down the Scottish Open a little bit. Colin Sherwin is back. Colin has agreed to actually name some golfers in this segment, unlike Pierce, who had an entire NASCAR segment and didn't name any drivers. So again, shout out to Pierce. Thanks. That was awesome. He did actually give some really good analysis. But let's recap the first two rounds here. Cameron Tringali, 9 under yesterday. I mean, the morning wave got an extremely beneficial draw here, and we see this all the time in links and Open Championship golf. Right now, Tringali's still in the lead. He's only got a 4-shot lead. It's down to 4 shots. He is 1 under on his round. He's at 10 under. But, what were your thoughts, Colin, when you woke up yesterday and you saw Cameron Tringali at like whatever he was at? I think it was 9 under par, and Gary Woodland was at 6 under too. But yeah, any thoughts on this leader? Is this like is this something that's going to last for much longer, do you think, or what are your thoughts here?
I think he's run out to so much of a lead at this point that he might be able to pull it off. Right now, he is 4 shots ahead of Doug Gim. So Tringali yesterday, birdies 5, and then birdies 7 through 14 in a row. Or actually, excuse me, 7 through 15. He made 8 birdies in a row to go with the 1 at 5. I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable. This should be a course where putting is going to help you. I'm looking at guys who can really roll the rock here at the end. And in fact, I have up here right now the best putting stats for strokes gained on the PGA Tour this year. And Tyrell Hatton is number 5. And I think he's the guy who could definitely make a push coming down the stretch here. Hatton is currently, look at us doing live, local, and late breaking news. He is -4 right now at T4 for this tournament. But I think he's a guy, and he's just made the turn at 10. So he's a guy I think who could definitely get back in this. But this is definitely a course for the putters. It's not like these guys, even if you're off the green, you're still in pretty good shape here. You're going to be putting it a lot off the green anyway.
Yeah, no kidding. And definitely like Tringali is a guy who, that's one of his better clubs. I mean, it can be a little bit up and down for him, but you're right. Like he was obviously just rolling in everything. Really slow fescue greens, but obviously got the speed of them. Going really good. Tringali right now plus 360 to close this out on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So like you said, we're getting to the midway point. He's still got a 4-shot lead. It's pretty interesting. And also interesting is the fact, we've got 3 players in John Rahm, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, who are, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the odds right now. And Rahm, I mean, still out on the course. I think he's grinded his way back to -3. Yeah, he has. So, any of those guys interest you right there? I mean, obviously we just mentioned Fitzpatrick. He's obviously an elite putter, and I think this is kind of interesting. Him, going into the Open next week it's a good omen for him. But anyone's odds, it doesn't have to be those 3. Anyone that are just like kind of lurking around the 3 under area that you're interested in. I know we talked a little bit about Joaquin Niemann before we came on too, but give me your thoughts on Rahm and anyone else just kind of lurking around that number.
Yeah, I don't know if this necessarily sets up as well for Rahm as it will next week at St. Andrews, where he's going to be able to, drive the road hole on 17 and just stick it on the green. You know what I mean? I don't know if this course necessarily sets up as well for him as he'll see next week at St. Andrews. So I'm probably a stay away there. This is a really interesting leaderboard. And the other thing we need to mention with Tringali is he does not have a PGA Tour win. So if you are in the camp that breaking your maiden, as they would say in horse racing, matters, that guys who haven't quite gotten it done yet, tend to fall apart a little bit down the stretch, especially, it's only Friday. It feels like it's Saturday. I don't know why this tournament feels like it started 3 weeks ago. But if you feel like a guy isn't quite there yet, he's still got looks like about 40 some holes at this point where he still has to get through, and he's still yet to win. So the pressure tends to get to these guys. They start thinking about things like a 2-year exemption on the PGA Tour, or playing in the Masters and the PGA Championship, all of this other stuff that comes with winning, and that tends to inhibit your ability to win. So Tringali is certainly a play, but in the 3 to 4 range, I like Fitzpatrick, and let's very quietly talk about the fact that the Live Tour's Ricky Fowler, 69-69 -2. He's a guy who can putt a little bit. If he gets wild, it's not away from the green. On the green, he's pretty solid. So that could be another guy who can make a run. And I'm sure that would not be dramatic at all for the folks at the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, who are both co-sponsoring this event. teaming up, trying to keep the live players out, and then live players are still getting in thanks to court injunctions. And now, actually, a couple of them are up the top here, as I believe somebody else, Justin Harding as well.
Justin Harding, yeah.
Too. Yeah. So let's see what happens here. That could make for some drama around the course this weekend for sure.
Yeah, Justin Harding, another elite putter too. But yeah, he's obviously one of the live defectors. Ricky hasn't officially signed with live yet, but I mean, the rumors are out there. So okay, I mean, we mentioned Neiman, we mentioned Fitzpatrick. There's one other guy up there that we didn't talk about, and it's Jordan Spieth. He's actually a -4 now. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be interested in him next week going into St. Andrews. Obviously, he almost won there in 2015, but like to me, I liked him a lot for DFS at the start of the week. His price was under 9K, which I thought was just absolutely ridiculous considering his links record. Is that a player like, do you have interest in Spieth not only for right now? I mean, he's plus 850 on the DraftKings Sportsbook, a number I don't necessarily hate because you did throw out the fact Cameron Tringale has been a terrible closer thus far. He's got no wins on the PGA Tour, and he has blown a lot of fourth round leads. Like he has been up there in prior spots. So would you back Spieth right now, or would you rather just kind of wait and see and maybe take an approach where, this is okay. I don't mind missing out on Spieth. Maybe I'll get on him next week though.
I like Spieth more as a fantasy play than I do as a betting play because the fantasy play tends to reward guys who make birdies, and Spieth is probably as up and down as anybody. He'll string together a bunch of birdies, and then he'll make double and triple. So I tend to like him more as a fantasy play than I do as a betting play. He's tough guy to read, and also he is in the 140s in putting. So that is something that's going to be an issue on this course. Next week at St. Andrews, that could be a little different. He's already won the Open Championship, so he certainly has played links golf, even though it took him 2 hours to play one hole to win the Open many years ago with Matt Kuchar. So I think he's a guy who could definitely get it done, but I'm not going to be on him either. I think there's just too many good opportunities down the board. The Open Championship, it really is open. I love the reference, Ben Curtis won this thing. Like anybody can win this thing. So I much prefer going down the board for the Open Championship just because the way the course is set up really sort of equalizes the field and sort of bunches everybody. And it just sort of who, gets the bounces, the rolls in the right spots sometimes.
Yeah. Let's not forget Zach Johnson in 2015 won at St. Andrews. So, which is almost as shocking as Ben Curtis winning 25 years ago, whatever it was now. Before we move on to the last question, is there, of the top of the leaderboard, because you kind of gave this away, but is there anyone you think this bodes really well for, like this week, like contending? Is it good for Xander, Fitzpatrick? Like of all these guys, kind of in the top 20 right now, is there someone that you're kind of like bullish on for next week? Just give me a quick answer. It doesn't have to be like a full thing, but is there anyone that you're interested in? You're glad to see playing well this week going into the Open?
Yeah, Xander. I think Xander can really. Yeah, I think he's a guy who can really get this done. He's won under pressure before, the Olympic medal, I think that's the most pressure packed event sometimes in sports. And he's done that before. He's a guy who can putt really well. He putts at good quality. I think he's just playing the right kind of game, and he's in the hunt every week, just playing really solid golf, and his game just sets up really well for a links course. So I think Xander's going to be the guy that I'm going to be on next week. I'm hoping that price gets into the 30s. If he's anywhere in the 30s next week, I'm going to be on him for sure.
We need a slow Sunday, just like a couple 70s here from Xander to finish maybe, and then we can still get a good number on him next week. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap things up here. I mean, we talked about most of the elites, but is there anyone down the board? I mean, we threw out Fowler, and I kind of liked Ricky here before, but anyone down the board you kind of maybe looking to sprinkle on, or just that we haven't mentioned on the leaderboard right now? I mean, look, like still got Justin Rose out on the course. Mito Pereira's still out on the course, only played 7 holes today. Anyone else you're looking at that you think feasibly could maybe make a run here?
I was all over Sam Burns until he went 3 over to start today. He was my guy. I was like, that was my red letter circle. I was like, oh, he's a guy who could, 3 under yesterday, could really make a run here, but that's not.
Yeah.
I know I think Cantlay as a top 5, top 10 play looks really good. 70-70 to open, but he's a guy who puts it as well as anybody and can definitely string it together. So I like him a lot. But again, I'm going to go with my sucker play here, which is always Mito Pereira. I still think he's one of the best players in the world. He's +2 today, but if anyone can make a run and make some birdies, like this guy, puts it in fairways, puts it in greens, can roll it. He's got the complete game. Not playing spectacular today. Went 66 yesterday. He's +2 through 7 today. And the problem is that now the course is just going to get harder as the day goes on. It firms up. It gets windswept and tougher. Tee time. That's the thing we're really going to want to look at on Tuesday next week is before you start making your bets, when are these guys going to be playing? Because you're going to want somebody kind of like with I guess your best case scenario is to sort of be in the middle on both days. You don't want the 6 a.m. on Thursday and the 2 p.m. on Friday, because then you're going to give back so many shots on Friday. So, I'm hoping that he gets somewhat of a good tee time, but he's going to struggle to come in here. If he does put together a round, I'll really like him for Saturday and Sunday, though.
Yeah, if Mito can hang around that 2 number, I think that even might be live. Like you said, get an earlier tee time. I think Tringale could easily drop back to like -8 or even worse by the end of the day. Like you said, it's only going to get tougher. So, okay, that's Colin Sherwin, guys. You can give him a follow on Twitter, Colin Sherwin. And that is pretty much going to do it for your Friday episode of The Sweat. There we go. We talk NASCAR. We got that baseball stuff out of the way, and we talk some golf. So a pretty good show, all things together. Madden kicks off at noon today, guys, noon Eastern. You can catch the slate around 5 p.m. Eastern as well. It's going to be Brendan Glasheen, Matt LaMarca, Steve Buchanan. It's the baseball edition. These guys are always giving out great baseball bets and stuff. So tune in for the slate around 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Who knows? Gary and I could be back. We did such a good job today. We'll probably just get rid of Emerson forever. Anyways, guys, tune in then. We'll see you back with The Sweat on Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, Have a great weekend, everybody.